Get your reaction, or hear what your reaction was when the Mets signed him to that deal, 15 years, $765 million. What was your reaction when you saw the tweet come out?
Well, when we started the Soto talk, like mid-season, we started talking about, this is going to push upwards of $600 million. And in no world did I think it would be pushing 765. I can't even say it because it doesn't feel right coming out. I've had people ask me, do you think it was an overpay? And I think no baseball player is worth that amount of money. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is worth $700 million, and you're getting a whole Japanese market, the whole Asian market for viewership. You don't really get that from Soto. You start digging into the analytics of that. It's like Japan is like 56 times the viewership that you get from the Dominican Republic for obvious reasons. So they're not getting a lot off the field from that like they would Ohtani. But you got to think these owners look at players, generational type talent players like Juan Soto, almost like artwork, right? It's like, all right, I found this piece of art that I really love, and I'm going to pay whatever it takes to get that in the entryway of my house, right? And it's so every owner that didn't get Juan Soto probably puts their head on the pillow and goes, yeah, that's an overpay. Because that feels good to say that, like, okay, at least we didn't spend that, and we can, divvy that out to multiple players now and make our roster better. But if you're Steve Cohen, you're thinking that's exactly what he was worth, because that's exactly what it took for me to get that piece of art hanging in my entryway to my house, right? To get him in my uniform. So I don't think it was an overpay if you're Steve Cohen, because he made it clear from the get-go, I'm going to pay whatever it takes to get him on my ball club.
And they ultimately get their man, and they do it against their crosstown rival in the New York Yankees. Obviously, the Red Sox were one of the top suitors, and they don't get Juan Soto. But according to Mass Live's Sean McAdam, the Red Sox final offer for Juan Soto was 15 years, $700 million. What does that say to you about the Red Sox efforts to try and get this guy?
Well, number one, I think it tells me that the Red Sox are in a good place to start building around this young talent, right? We've seen where the club has been at the last few years, not really making the big splashes, not adding the superstars, not building around the guys that they have, and within there's been an annoyance and even anger towards the team because their lack of movement and action in the off seasons and adding players. But I think the organization is finally in a place where they can open the checkbook and they can add big names to this roster. The minor league system, which was in shambles after 2018, has finally been rebuilt to a top 10 system in all of baseball. So you have young talent ready there. You have young talent, which we saw in the big leagues last year with Duran, Abreu, those type players, Tristan Casas, and I'm sure we'll get to this talk down the road about is there a big trade that's going to be made for Garrett Crochet? And it's going to include some of those names that I just said because of the farm system, because of other players that are around on this roster. So, of course, you start getting on Twitter and social media, and it's, interest kings, and here we go again, more of that, which I understand from the fan base, but they just made it obvious that they were willing to spend $700 million. Let's let this offseason play out. Let's see what happens, because there's a lot of names out there right now. And I know $700 million over 15 years, you start looking at payroll and AAV and how much it hits on the luxury tax and this and that. And that's a lot different than adding guys for 5 or 6 years at a higher rate. But these guys are willing to spend money. And I think we're going to see some moves made here pretty soon.
All right, so let's hit on the couple avenues that the Red Sox can go. And you hit on them, free agency and trying to acquire a player via trade. Some of the big names that are still out there, Max Fried, Corbin Burnes, obviously the top of the line starting pitchers that are still out of the free agency market. And then on the position player side, you have a name like Alex Bregman that WEI's Rob Bradford was tying the Red Sox to and saying that the Red Sox were heavily interested in bringing him into the fold. Where would you go first as the general manager of this team? Is it going after one of those top line starters or getting somebody like an Alex Bregman onto this team position player wise?
I think first things first, this team needs pitching. I mean, even with how bad they ended offensively last season, the last month of the season, they were still a top 3 as far as run production went in baseball as an offense. So they have to assess the pitching situation, the top end of the rotation. And I think that starts with Max Fried. I would love Corbin Burnes. I have a feeling he's pretty set on going out west. I'm looking towards like San Francisco Giants. He grew up in Bakersfield, which is 4 hours south of there. He grew up watching the Giants. I would not be surprised to see him out there now that Buster Posey has the reins out there. They just signed Willie Adames to the $182 million deal, showing, hey, we want to win now. So you got to think they're going to be aggressive and try to add that Corbin Burns to their roster. If I'm the Red Sox, I'm looking right at Max Fried. I'm on the phone with him more today. I'm trying to get that done by the end of this week. I like Max Fried. He doesn't have the highest, the strikeout stuff isn't like you would see from most of these elite arms. I think he was one of 3 slam dunks as far as pitching goes this offseason, as far as free agent pitchers. He gets a ton of ground balls, and if you're having Trevor Story back on the left side of the infield, all those cutters and breaking balls down and into righties, he's going to get a ton of ground balls, which you want a ground ball pitcher at Fenway Park, especially as a lefty when you're facing righties with the monster right there. So I'm going after Max Fried. I think contract-wise, probably a 5-year deal. I'm looking probably like the 140 range. That's 28 AAV. I think that is for a top of the rotation guy. I think that is basically what the market is. It could go higher. Who knows with baseball right now? But I like Max Fried right there at the top. Obviously, there's the trade option with Garrett Crochet. I'm not completely sold on Garrett Crochet. I love the stuff. I love the 100 miles an hour he's got in his back pocket. He's only been a starter for a season, right? He's dealt with the injuries. He was a bullpen guy. Not exactly proven as a starter, but if you can trade for him and then you can figure out obviously an extension once he gets here. But having those 2 guys and then obviously with Bayo and these other guys in this rotation, it would look pretty good. And on your point on Bregman, he said he's willing to move to second base. We know how close he is with Alex Cora with their time in Houston. Look, he's going to be 31 in March. He's not old by any means. I think there were some red flags last year as I kind of dug into the metrics on him. His walk rate almost cut in half last year. It could have been a fluke season. Who knows? Quality of contact was down just a touch, but he's a pull launch guy, right? Which that plays in Houston with the Crawford boxes, that plays in Boston with the monster. It generates a lot of weak fly balls, but if you're in a park like Fenway, they may not be outs. They may be doubles off the wall. His defense is still very good. He said he's willing to move to second base. Now, do they want to give Christian Campbell more time in the minor leagues? Do they mix him into a trade thinking they sell high on him? He came in, he wasn't even a top 30 prospect in the team, and now he's arguably one of the best players in the entire system after the season he had last year. So do they try to sell high there, or do they stockpile him? Well, if you bring in Alex Bregman for what I thought was going to be 5 years, 150, and now it's looking like it's going to be 7 years, 200 or more, who knows? Do you really keep somebody to stockpile at second base? We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and there's so many ways the Red Sox can go there, right? The fact that they still have Andrew Vaughn, that you mentioned Christian Campbell there, it's going to be really fascinating to see how this plays out. And you hit on the AAV, with what Bregman could get, what Juan Soto ultimately got. And I always think of that quote from Andrew Friedman, of course, running the Dodgers, where if you think rationally about spending on free agents, you're going to come in third place every time. So that obviously plays a huge factor there. Are there any free agents, Will, that the Red Sox could go after that the team went after in a similar way in your 2013 year? Because I think of that team, when you guys won the championship and you had the Shane Victorinos of the world, the Mike Napolis. There were so many nice middle market or mid-level moves, rather, that the team ultimately made that paid off. Are there any that the Red Sox might be interested in?
It's tough to make that call because there's so many offensive players, and it's kind of a stockpile at some positions for the Red Sox. So it's kind of like after they make a move, like what do they need after that? That's why I hope that trade comes sooner than later if they're going to do it, right? Is it Wilyer Abreu? Is it Tristan Casas? Which prospects, right? Can you somehow move Masataka Yoshida's contract and replace that with like a Teoscar Hernandez, right? Who is well known as one of the great teammates in this game, and then obviously offensive production from a right-handed power bat has been very good the last few seasons. So that would be a great addition. Too. What was that?
I was just saying he could swing it at Fenway too.
Yeah, he could swing it anywhere. He could swing it literally anywhere right now, but there's really not a fit for him on this team right now, right? You look at Jarren Duran, Cedar Rafaela, who you want in center field every day, so he can go win a Gold Glove. It feels like Wilyer Abreu, it feels like it's inevitable that he's going to be moved. I'm 50-50 on Tristan Casas. I think there's a very high ceiling there with him that he's yet to tap into for a full season. Obviously, we've seen it in spurts, but missed 98 games last season. The defense has to get better, which can improve. But he's a 30 to 40 home run guy. He's a 90 to 100 RBI guy, and he's just going to keep getting better. So if you sell on Casas, you got to think it's got to be for a top end of the rotation type pitcher.
And one scenario that I think it's been played out a lot in Red Sox fans' minds about the idea of trading Tristan Casas is you would move Rafael Devers to first base. How does that look in your mind?
Well, I think those conversations have to be had with Rafi Devers because he's the face of your franchise, right? Like, this is a guy who is very important to this team. I know a lot of people say, oh, he's not a leader, he's not vocal, this and that. Yeah, but he leads by example, right? And if he's down, who knows how he performs. That's going to have to be a decision they make within the house that he can be okay with that move. I would love to see him move to first base. I think he could be a very good first baseman. It's not as easy as people think. It's different. I played both third and first. I found first base was a lot easier than third base. Third base, you got to make a great catch. You got to make a throw that's across the infield. First base, you just tackle it, right? you tackle it, keep it in front of you, flip it to the pitcher, go tag the base. It sounds a lot easier than it is, especially when you got a player making $313 million. You kind of want to have those decisions. You want that guy happy in your clubhouse. But you trade him. That's kind of got to be if you trade Casas, that's got to be the answer, I would think. And then all of a sudden, Bregman's playing third base. You hold on to Vaughn Grisham, who I think is still going to hit. People forget how young he is. I'm still high on his bat. I think he had a weird season last year, obviously with the injuries, starting late, tried to rush back. It wasn't good. Came up late in the season and the bat looked better. He started finding a rhythm. So I think he's still going to hit. And then Christian Campbell's a freak of nature that has come out of nowhere, right? And it's like you have all these options. I don't know if your head's spinning yet, Joe, but mine is just trying to figure out what the heck the Red Sox are going to do. But this is just a typical wait and see what happens because every move they make is going to be a domino effect of how it affects the next person.
Yeah, there's so many different scenarios as to how this could all play out. And as you just hit on it, I mean, it's so fascinating to take your mind through what could ultimately happen. And Will, I think we can end on this. You know the vibes around the team, and you obviously do games for the Red Sox on NESN, and of course you cover it through CBS Sports as well. You know that fans are itching for the team to spend some money. Do you have a feeling, a confidence that the team is going to ultimately do that in free agency?
I do. This is I started the offseason as, I guess, cautiously optimistic, right? Where I was thinking, okay, this organization's in a good place. They have young talent at the big league level that's proven they can play full seasons in the big leagues. It's time to build around that. This is the time where you got through the growth of what you needed, and now you build around them, and now you go win. Now you add the veterans around, but you have to spend money to do that. And, I was a little gun shy there because I didn't know if they would actually do it. But then there were these reports that they're $700+ million offer to Juan Soto. And you don't just say, I'm going to go add Juan Soto and that be it, right? You're going to spend money because you can't. Here's the thing with the Red Sox. I know you got to go. But if you just add Juan Soto, you're not a playoff team. You're good. Your offense is still good. But you got to pitch in this league. You got to play defense. Those are the two things that killed them last year was late inning blown games, starters not working deep in games, the defense not making routine plays over and over again. Those things got to be fixed. You got to fix the leaks. The offense was not the leak and that led to the sunken ship. It was the defense and the pitching. So I do think they're going to spend money on pitching. I think this gets spread around. I think this is a very successful offseason for the Boston Red Sox, but I do want to remind you, these players have a choice. They can have every offer on the table they want, and they get to pick where they go. That's the beauty of free agency. So sometimes it's not that the free agent that the front office didn't make the offer or make the push or the pitch to get the team, the player on the team. Sometimes the player just goes the opposite direction. But I think there's a lot of players out there right now that want to wear a Red Sox uniform next year. Yeah, they're on the precipice of playoff contention. And you talked about the young talent. I mean, there's so much coming up through the pipeline. We saw a lot of good last year, too. I hope people don't forget that. But for sure. And I just want to say one more thing. The front office knows they got to win back this fan base because there's a lot of fans that shipped out, and there's a lot of fans still on the fence. And they know that. This is one of the rare places where the front office has to take the temperature of the fan base because it matters, because that's what makes this place special. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and you know that better than anybody. Again, same amount of World Series championships as Juan Soto, but
yeah, same guy.
Yeah, same
guy.
amount, same player. Well, appreciate the time. We got to do this more often, but thanks so much for joining us. Of course, you can check him out at CBS Sports. Will Middlebrooks, former World Series champ. Thanks for joining us in CBS News Boston.
Thanks, Joe.